intimidating. Although Weejoey briefly snatched the world record from him last year, it only lasted a week, and now Zallard was taking it to new heights. Sinister One had never managed a perfect Tyson. Weejoey only had the one, but he couldn't replicate it. Zallard now had 5 perfect fights, and counting. The community watched with bated breath to see what he'd do next. But then all of a sudden, a wrench was thrown into the works when a third player pulled off a perfect Tyson fight. Someone fairly new who was making a push for the world record. That player's name was SummoningSalt. Back in 2016, I was an inexperienced Punch-Out speedrunner, still learning the ropes, but improving quickly. Eventually, I realized I had to focus on Tyson if I wanted to reach the next level, so I did. After months of practice, on May 7th, 2016, I achieved my first ever perfect Tyson fight. And here's the video. Yeah, I was an idiot and wasn't recording despite having a tape loaded in my VCR. I scrambled to press record the instant Tyson hit the mat and only got a little max celebration. Luckily, I redeemed myself a few days later by getting a 210 Tyson, this time fully captured in all its glory. And then, a few weeks later, I got another. And then another a few days after that. And then another later that same day. It became apparent that, for whatever reason, I had a knack for landing the frame-perfect hooks. By this point, Zallard had upped his perfect Phase 3 consistency to about 10%, but mine was closer to 15 or 20%. I was able to finish off a lot of fights that made it past Phase 2. However, Zallard still had one massive advantage over me. His dodging was far and away better than mine. The tighter you cut each dodge on Tyson's uppercuts, the sooner you can start to counter him. In other words, ideally the instant after Tyson throws his uppercut, you want Little Mac to be back to center so he can punch. Here's a comparison of the same pattern with both tight and loose dodging. The difference between dodges may only be a few frames, but across an entire phase, the time can really add up. By the end of the phase, the difference might total multiple seconds, which is obviously a game changer if you're going for a world record. Tight dodging is risky, as if you're too early, you get knocked down. Zallard was better at it than me. A pattern where I'd get a 55, he'd get a 54. Part of the difference was that Zallard had mastered double quick dodging. He'd preemptively dodge just in case Tyson did the short delay, and then did a second dodge to account for his long delay. This took reaction time out of the equation, letting Zallard focus on cutting his dodges as tightly as possible. So even though I was able to get as many or more perfect fights than Zallard, his were faster on average. After a handful of perfect fights, I managed to get a 207, but Zallard of course had a pair of 206s. As things stood, I didn't have a great chance of beating him. Yet I wasn't discouraged, because even though he was ahead, I had my eyes set on the ultimate prize. The time that I knew would be the end of the road for Mike Tyson, if it was ever achieved. My goal was to be the first person to set the unbeatable Tyson record, 205. If you get a second knockdown with 128, like Zallard did a year earlier, then get an extremely fast Phase 3 pattern, you can get a final time of 205. What if you knock him down at 127? Well, here's what happens. To begin Phase 3, Tyson stands still for a couple seconds preparing to throw an uppercut. Then the timer hits 130, his pattern switches, and he throws hooks. He can't start before 130, so knocking him down before 128 just means he stands still longer. As long as your second knockdown is by 128, you're going as fast as you can go. So there were 3 components to getting a 205. First, get a very fast uppercut pattern to get a 128 or earlier. Second, get an extremely fast Phase 3 pattern, which is about 1 in 8 likely to occur. Third, hit all 22 frame perfects through the entire fight without missing. A 205 was effectively a perfect fight. There was no going under it. Zallard and I both knew this would be the ultimate Tyson record. We each had our strengths and weaknesses. He was a little faster than me, but I was a little more consistent. Over the summer of 2016, we both ramped up our Tyson attempts in an effort to get the 205, and we began getting perfect fights like they were nothing. By the end of August, Zallard and I had achieved a total of 66 perfect fights. None of them had beaten his 206.82. We didn't realize how lucky he was at the time to get that fight. I was frustrated. For all these perfect fights I'd gotten, what good was it if I couldn't beat Zallard? And then came September 2nd.
Holy cow.
On my 44th perfect fight, I finally got a 206, and it was a new world record. Although my recording setup at the time didn't work with the Tyson Finder, it most likely beat Zallard by 4 or 5 frames, some sort of mid-206. But what I was most proud of was my execution. I'd mastered the double quick dodge, and I was cutting things fairly tight. Even though this wasn't the 205, I felt that the fight showed my improvements, and that a 206 had been a long time coming. But what I wasn't expecting was what happened next. Let's just say, that day ended up being quite significant for me.
Oh, whoa, what? 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 Oh, what? 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 I have no words. I do not have words. I don't have words. Yep, 206. Just another one. You know, no big deal.
My first 43 perfect fights were all 207 or above. The next 4 in a row were 206s.
Suck my balls,
all
Fox
on the
Noodles!
same day.
Suck my fucking balls. I am the king of this category, and don't you ever forget that shit. I am the fucking king. I got that shit back in 1 day, and I still have time to go out and drink. That shit is fucking light. Holy...